May I have your attention, please? We're going to resume. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? We're going to move on with our program. So the good news is we're back on track, and the good news is I'm not going to reread our Honorable State Senator's bio. Before I bring him up, I wanted to just acknowledge how fortunate we are to have our elected officials here with us today. We enjoy a good partnership between our legislative representatives and the Torrance Area Chamber of Commerce. And also, I really want to give a shout out to their hardworking staff. If you're here, could you please be acknowledged? Let us clap for the hardworking staff who are representing them every day. And now it is my pleasure to reintroduce State Senator Isadore Hall III.
Thank you so much. And I did not pay him to do that, by the way. First of all, let's give Ms. Cunningham a round of applause for doing such a phenomenal job today. And it's so good to see my colleagues, Assemblymember Hadley, and I'm sure the Senator Ben Allen is on his way. But please give them both a round of applause for the extraordinary work that they're doing in the legislature. And it's always so good to see the angel of this great city and his colleagues, Mayor Pat Fury and the Torrance City Council. Please give them a round of applause as well for being such great stewards of a phenomenal city. And I see the Torrance Police Department here rated as one of the #1 police departments in California. Let's give the Torrance Police Department another round of applause. Thank you for your service. Good morning. My name is Isadore Hall, and I am proud to be joined by so many fellow South Bay leaders at this great event that the Chamber is hosting. And again, Chairwoman Cunningham and the Board of Directors for the Torrance Area Chamber of Commerce, thank you for your tireless work to create jobs and improve the economy, particularly here in the great city of Torrance. Your hard work is obviously paying off, and I'm proud to call you a partner as we work together to grow Torrance even more. Torrance is the heart, in my opinion, of the 35th Senate District, and it is my honor to be your voice in Sacramento, fighting for job creation and economic development here in Torrance and throughout the South Bay. Standing here today in 2015, it's a much different picture than when I first began serving in the state legislature in 2008 with Assemblymember Warren Friutani. And let's give Warren Friutani a round of applause, my colleague and friend. And Warren, you know firsthand, in 2008, California and our nation, we were on the brink of economic collapse. And the day we took an oath in the California State Legislature, we were losing jobs in California. People were losing their homes, and as only Ben could do, arrive in the middle of my speech. Please give Senator Ben Allen another round of applause. It's so good. Yes, it's only he could do. In 2008, we were losing our jobs. We were losing our homes, and folks obviously were losing hope. And the next few years were some of the most challenging and ever experienced challenges by the business and by local governments, second only to the Great Depression. This time of challenge forced businesses to innovate, to become smarter with their limited resources, and to develop new business models to ensure long-term economic growth and stability. The state of California was forced to do the same. It wasn't an option, it's something that we had to do. It was necessary to tighten our belts, to innovate, to do more with less, and to develop long-term strategies to serve the public now and into the future. During that process, we were forced to make some painful cuts. Warren and I must say that the cuts were very difficult to do. Cuts that impacted the poor, cuts that impacted the needy, cuts that haunted me and continues to haunt me to this day. But it was because of these cuts and because of the leadership of those in Sacramento, the leadership of Governor Brown, and the leadership of the voters who passed Proposition 30, and most recently Proposition 1 and Proposition 2, we're on a path to re-innovate in public education like never before. A path to deal with the state's crippling drought. Just last week, we passed a $1 billion drought measure to secure water in California. I think we deserve a round of applause for that. And we're on a path to help businesses become the most competitive in the world. California has increased its rating worldwide. We are now 7th in the world as a leading state, as opposed to 9, 8. Now we're 7, which means that the business vitality and fabric of California is growing even the more. And so I am proud to say that after several years of economic challenges, California's budget is balanced. I can also say with great confidence that the legislature this year will pass a balanced, on-time budget by June 15th that invests in public education, invests in job creation, that addresses the state's devastating drought, and that puts California on the path to long-term economic growth. Aside from the budget, there are a number of important issues that I'm working on in Sacramento. In education, the work I did on the passage of the local control funding formula created a generational change in how we fund education today. The LCFF recognizes that children in foster care, poor children, and English learner students need more to be successful. In the coming years, school districts, including many right here in the South Bay, will see dramatic increases in public funding to ensure that every student has the opportunities to succeed and no child is left behind. This funding, I must say, needs to be monitored closely, and we must hold our local school boards accountable for how they use these new dollars and how these new dollars are spent. And there's no question, I have no problem with Torrance because Torrance has always done an extraordinary job in managing the resources that the state sends them. So let's give our Torrance Unified School District a round of applause. We're talking about the other school districts, not Torrance. I am especially hopeful that school districts will spend some of the additional resources on career tech education. Career tech education. For me, it's a no-brainer, and it is desperately needed in Torrance and in the South Bay. College, I must say, is very important to our economy's strength, and I am proud to call myself a USC Trojan. Fight on. I always love that part. Someone said, move on, keep it going. But I must say, Senator Allen, that the reality is that college is not for everyone. And not everyone is going to go, obviously, to college. What we as policymakers need to do is understand that in this new economy, a technical skill can provide someone with a very successful career. And while we're here, I'll put a plug there and give Jan Vogel a round of applause for the great work that he's doing to help put people in the industry of career tech. Please give Jan Vogel a round of applause. Many of the economic sectors in Torrance and in the South Bay are asking for workers with specific technical training that you cannot obtain in a 4-year university. The aerospace industry is one of the many industries that have a long and proud history in the South Bay. And they are looking to a new generation of workers to build the communication satellite or the next rockets to Mars. Ben and I had the opportunity of touring some of the aerospace industries just 2 or 3 weeks ago. And all they were talking about were career tech opportunities, $100,000 jobs given to our local residents to help be innovative and create opportunities for our nation and for our world. The energy industry has been a staple of the South Bay for generations, employs thousands, and will continue to have an important role in supplying needed energy resources throughout the state for years to come. These are but two sectors that are in desperate need of workers with technical skills developed through career technical education. And so I am working very closely this year with Senator Ben Allen and Assemblymember Autumn Burke on further developing career tech education in our schools, and I am excited that we will be able to accomplish this session to help develop the South Bay's next generation of workers and leaders. Give Senator Ben Allen a round of applause while we're here. While we may be just up the road from the Port of LA and the Port of Long Beach, the vitality and competitiveness of our ports is critical to our state and our nation's future economic security. As demonstrated by the recent slowdown at ports up and down the West Coast, our state and our nation's recent economic growth is very fragile. And I'm very, very happy that Councilmember Uranga was one of the instrumental figures in Long Beach to help keep our ports open and to keep goods movement flowing through not just California, but through our nation and across the world. At one point during the port dispute, I counted nearly 40 ships waiting at dock at the Port of LA and the Port of Long Beach, not to mention the endless stacks of containers waiting to be loaded for export to countries around the world. These containers were not some inanimate object. To me, these containers represented thousands and thousands of jobs. And I know that the port slowdown had a huge impact on most, if not all, businesses in this room, and I'm glad to see cranes moving, people working, and goods being delivered to keep this economy going. This year, I am proud to author SB 63 and SB 357 that further modernize our ports. With the end of redevelopment, many local governments have been looking for new alternatives to incentivize infrastructure development. SB 63 will do this. It will give our ports the same financial and financing tools that cities now have to finance infrastructure projects that will encourage new development along our waterfronts. SB 357 is a bill that I am working on with the Board of Equalization, Chair Jerome Horton, to modernize the way rail cars are taxed to encourage increased use on shipping by rail. The reality is that we have to be creative in how we attract business. Unfortunately, it is a reality. California is losing business to Texas and Louisiana and so many other states. It's time. Time is now when elected officials that are representing state offices must keep businesses in mind when they're passing legislation. We want to attract business, not run business out of the state of California. And so I'm looking forward to working with Ms. Cunningham and Mayor Fury and so many other elected officials in this room, sitting down at a table, regardless of whether you're a Republican or Democrat or decline to state. It's not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. It's not a decline to state issue. It's a jobs issue. It's a California issue. It's a sustainability issue for our great state of California. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you. And again, I want to thank Ms. Cunningham and the board of directors for inviting me. I want to thank my colleague, Assemblymember Hadley and Assemblymember Ben Allen. We're working together to make California a better place for all of us, for generations and generations to come. Again, thank you all for this opportunity to be here, and God bless Torrance. Thank you.
Senator Hall, on behalf of the Torrance Area Chamber of Commerce, we want to thank you for speaking today, and we have a small token of our gratitude.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
And now I have the pleasure of inviting Joe On from Northrop Grumman Aerospace Systems to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Tara. On behalf of the 11,000 South Bay employees of Northrop Grumman, we are proud members of the Torrance Area Chamber of Commerce and honored to present Senator of California's 26th District, Ben Allen. This past November, California State Senator Ben Allen was overwhelmingly elected to represent the 26th Senate District, which consists of 14 cities and 22 distinct communities in the West Side and the South Bay regions of Los Angeles County, including the cities of Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach, Palos Verdes Estates, Ranchos Palos Verdes, Rolling Hills Estates, El Segundo, Lomita, and Torrance. Phew. Senator Allen was selected as a freshman senator to serve as chair of the Senate's Committee on Elections and Constitutional Amendments, as well as the state legislature's Joint Committee on the Arts. He also serves on the Committee on the Budget, Veterans Affairs, Natural Resources and Water, Transportation and Housing, and the Subcommittee on Budget Education, and was appointed by Senate President Pro Tem as vice chair of the Senate Select Committee on Aerospace and Defense. Prior to representing the 26th Senate District, Senator Allen served as board president of the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District. While president of the board, he led a successful $385 million school bond measure to upgrade district facilities using cutting-edge environmental best practices while creating local construction jobs. Before his election to the upper house of the California legislature, Senator Allen had a very successful legal practice with the law firms of Richardson and Patel and Brian Cobb. While attending law school, he served as a voting member of the University of California Board Region and as a judicial clerk with the United Nations International Criminal Tribunal on Rwanda. He's a senior fellow with the International Human Rights Organization Humanity in Action, member of the South Pacific Council on International Policy, and a graduate of the Jewish Federation's New Leaders Project. He serves as a lecturer at UCLA Law School, where he teaches education law and policy. Senator Allen received his bachelor's degree from Harvard University, master's degree from Cambridge, and his Juris Doctorate from Bolt Law School at UC Berkeley. He is a public servant, a distinguished legal scholar, and our senator for the 26th District. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Well, thank you so much for the very warm introduction, and it's always very difficult to follow my dear colleague Isadore Hall on the dais for several reasons. First of all, I don't know anyone can pull off a bow tie with such panache, and he's also got such a warm style, and you know, it's been great sitting. We actually sit across the aisle from each other, literally. We're right next door to each other, and I think it's appropriate because we're right next door to each other geographically too. Just to kind of explain how it is that Torrance has one assembly member but two senators. This is just the quirk of our current redistricting system. So everything that's west of Hawthorne and south of Sepulveda in Torrance is in my district, and everything to the east of Hawthorne and north of Sepulveda is in Senator Hall's district. So that's just to kind of explain. I've got the peninsula, I've got Lomita, and then I've got the coastal cities. In fact, they include all the ones that were mentioned. They go also, my district goes all the way up to Santa Monica and the Palisades, and then right east to Hollywood. I've got the Hollywood Bowl, I've got the Walk of Fame, Runyon Canyon. I mean, it's an extraordinarily, West Hollywood, Beverly Hills, big district. lots of people. I was having breakfast the other day with someone from Montana, the state of Montana, which has 100 assembly members, 50 senators, and the entire state, geographically is about the size of California, a little smaller, but population-wise about the size of our Senate districts. So my district, your district, every Senate district. So we're just in an enormous place here in California, and it really does speak to some of the concerns and the challenges we have. One of the exciting things about being in a place like Sacramento is that when we make policy and we make changes, the impact is felt so wide. Isadore mentioned that we're the 7th largest economy in the world. And I've had friends who've moved from Washington to Sacramento to do work because they actually think they can get things done there. And that when they pass laws, isn't that amazing? I know. Who would have thought that you could actually, you could say that? But I would say that it's an example of how things have improved. First of all, the economy's gotten better. We've changed some of the rules that reduce gridlock in the legislature, and I do think there's more of a bipartisan consensus in the town that allows us to do our work. And I will say I'm really pleased to be here today, sitting next to Assemblymember David Hadley, who is a very talented member of the Assembly, who you'll be hearing from shortly. So my committees were mentioned. Let me just talk a little bit about them, because a lot of your work in the legislature is in committee, where you do these deep dives into various areas of policy. It's been fascinating, and it's one of the really fun things about being in the legislature is just how much you get to learn. You're constantly learning new things, and you have to delve deeply into so many different issue areas. It's a little scary at times to think of how much responsibility we're given. And how much information we really ought to be internalizing and cogitating over and understanding in order to make our decisions. So I'm the chair of the Elections and Constitutional Amendments Committee. A big thing that we're looking at this year is the question of voter turnout. A lot of folks don't know this, but in the last election in November, the statewide voter turnout was 42%. Now, while in some counties, there was one county, Sierra County, for example, up in the Sierras, they had a 73% voter turnout that exact same day. And here in LA County, same day, same vote, same candidates, same propositions, we were at 31% voter turnout. Now, if you realize how big LA is with regards to the state, and you know anything about math, that's actually more extraordinary that we were a full 11 points below the state average. It really is a problem. I think it speaks to a danger in our level of civic engagement and our commitment, or at least the connection that exists between government and the citizenry that certainly deeply concerns me. Then you look at things like the recent LA City Council elections, which were at an 8.3% turnout, extraordinarily low, and they were making very big decisions, amending their charter, etc. So we're actually looking a lot at this question of voter turnout. We're looking at things like voter registration. We're looking at vote centers. It looks like hopefully by around 2018, maybe a little bit later, the county will have voting centers all over the county, at shopping centers and hotels and schools and community centers and libraries, etc., where people can go vote for 2 weeks before Election Day. And so I'm actually running a bill that will allow to facilitate that process and make it easier for that process to take place. Because as I've gone out and heard from a lot of people, you end up hearing a lot of people don't end up making it to the polls on Election Day because life takes over, right? You're picking up your kids, then you got to go to work. You're dealing with getting food. Maybe there's soccer practice, and by the time you're ready to actually go vote, 8 o'clock has come, and ultimately you just weren't able to make it. Now a lot of people are voting by mail. One of the reasons why we're so far behind the rest of the state is that our county did a really rather poor job back in the day of rolling out the vote by mail program. So many other counties have a much more robust vote by mail program, and now something like half of our voters are voting by mail around the state. It's really amazing how much things have changed. So that's something we've been looking at as well. We're also looking at other ways to do voter engagement, and then we're trying to look at some inefficiencies in the system. Just last week, 2 weeks ago, we had a special election up in the north portion of the county where there was one candidate on the ballot. And so that entire election cost the county of Los Angeles $1.4 million because we had to man all the voting booths, and when at the same time we've got a total budget of $250,000 for voter outreach. So it's just crazy. So we've got to get our head around that disparity, that difference, and put in place a better system that will save us some money, while also making meaningful reforms to engage our electorate a little bit more. As was mentioned, I'm chair of the Joint Committee on the Arts. We're going to be having an event coming up, a hearing coming up in Sacramento shortly on the creative economy and looking at all the exciting things that are happening in Los Angeles and elsewhere that connect the arts with economic vitality and creation. I'm going to stick around a little bit after this. If you are involved in an arts-related industry and want to share your story about how the arts help to grow our economy here in California, I'd love to hear those stories. We're looking for ways to kind of match up both tax incentives and cultural zones and arts districts, support for artists, support for industries. Obviously, I was a big supporter. I know I'm sure Senator Hall was as well, of the tax incentive that helped to keep so many of those critical TV and film production jobs here in California. And we've got to go a lot further. A lot of people don't think of the South Bay always as a big arts center, but I know there's a lot of exciting things happening down here in the arts, and I'd love to connect up with folks who are involved in that area and that space and get you involved with our committee. I also serve on our Transportation and Housing Committee, which I think covers two of the largest crises we face infrastructurally in the Los Angeles area today. We do have a housing crisis. There is you realize that we actually have the worst salary to housing cost ratio in the nation here in Southern California. So our housing costs are so high, our salaries just aren't high enough, and people are having a real hard time affording the basic costs of life, of being able to live here. And of course, our lack of a really decent transportation infrastructure compounds that problem, because people now have to live further and further away from their homes. They sometimes have to take lower paying jobs, jobs that aren't as adequate, aren't as good, because there are all sorts of challenges associated with just even getting around this town. And so that's something I'd like I'm very involved with in trying to figure out ways to both improve our road infrastructure. The average Angelino actually spends double the average American in car repairs because of how bad our road maintenance and our road infrastructure is. We also, of course, are so far behind. I really want to see Los Angeles move into the League of Civilized Cities when it comes to how we move around and how we get around. It's really, you go to, I've spent time, yes, thank you. We should applaud. I actually, when I was in college, I studied abroad in Mexico City, which has such a lower per capita income. It's such in some ways, so many disadvantages economically there, and yet they've got this extraordinary metro system that moves millions of people around every single day. And I still kind of don't understand why we can't do that ourselves here. I know there are some issues with our geography, but I don't think we've done ourselves a service, and I think it actually does impact our economic vitality. I also serve on the Natural Resources and Water Committee, which has been fascinating, and obviously Senator Hall mentioned the recent announcement of all of our drought reduction activities. We do have an enormous crisis on our hands with regards to water, and I think that it's hard for us sometimes in the cities to feel it, but I think we're going to start to feel it, particularly with some of these restrictions and measures that were put in place by the governor, including a requirement that California cities and towns cut their water use by 25%. It's going to be tough. It's going to involve some belt tightening. I think ultimately it's what we have to do in order to be able to move forward in a decent equilibrium. And so this action will save water, it'll crack down on water wasters, invest in new water management technologies, and also streamline government's response to our historic drought conditions. We are in this together ultimately, and I know that as businesses, folks pay whatever they must for the water they need in order to operate, but there are some folks in the state who are not quite as judicious and who don't really pay their fair share to make, so part of this effort has to do with trying to make California's water available to all. Of course, we're also having to have difficult conversations with folks in other parts of the state who are using a great majority of the state's water, and those conversations are vital. They're essential if we're going to be able to move forward in a sustainable way, in a way that will actually help us to. And when I say sustainable, it's not just in terms of environmental sustainability. It's just basic infrastructural sustainability for us to be able to grow as a state economically and in terms of our population. So watch that space. I'm also serving on the Veterans Affairs Committee. I've got the largest VA facility in the state up in Westwood. I've got a bill that relates to veterans pension scams. So follow that issue. It's very interesting. There's a lot of people out there hanging out around VA facilities who are getting veterans to sign away their benefits in return for a large upfront loan. And this bill will seek to crack down on those people who are taking advantage of veterans during very vulnerable times. A lot of our guys are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, oftentimes physically very harmed, very, in some ways broken, many of them psychologically so. And there are unfortunately a small but pernicious group of people in our society who prey on them and take advantage of them, and we need to do everything we can to protect them. They did everything they could to protect us. Yeah, thank you. So, it was also mentioned that I'm the vice chair of the. Sorry, I serve on the subcommittee that oversees our state education budget through the Budget and Fiscal Review Committee. And some folks here know that I come to the state senate by way of a school board. I served on the Santa Monica Malibu School Board for 2 terms. I was a president there. I'm the child of 2 educators. Big supporter of education in all of its forms, and a fierce believer in the opportunities that it provides. And one of the things I've been so interested in is something that was alluded to in the earlier speech, and that's the Southern California Regional Occupational Center, SCROC, SoCal Rock. Everyone has a different way of pronouncing it. So I'm multilingual, so I appreciate that. So as members of the Torrance Chamber of Commerce know firsthand, SoCal Rock has over 300 business affiliates right here in the South Bay who participate in externships, on-the-job training, mock interview panels, and conduct interviews on site for hiring. Every year, hundreds of SCROC attendees receive jobs in their selected career areas. And one of my top priorities as your representative in Sacramento is to help this effort to secure long-term funding for SCROC. And I know that, yes. I know that Assembly Members Burke and Hadley and Senator Hall care a great deal about this as well. I'm very pleased to report that we're making real progress. Working with my staff, I do think that we've got some short-term success within reach. So we've identified a path that we believe will ensure sustainable funding to keep the center's doors open for the next year. I was at a hearing just last week and got the folks from the governor's office to agree to hold harmless those programs that were being funded under both adult grant and CTE programs. So that was a good sign. We've been having some closed session discussions with folks in the governor's office, and I'm feeling confident, I'm feeling optimistic at this point that we're going to be able to at least keep this organization going for another year with state funding. Now, of course, the next challenge is how do we find a long-term funding plan? And I think it is really going to have to involve a hybrid model that will involve philanthropy, public funding, but also private sector funding. And I really do think that there is a call to arms here with regards to the folks in this room. Let's get together, let's start talking about ways that we can cobble together a budget for this extraordinary center that will keep this thing going on the long term. I think it provides so much service to this community, provides so much service to the business community in particular. And I know there are a lot of businesses that only want to hire some of the students coming out of SCROC because of how high quality, how high caliber the educational program there is. If you have not visited the center, I really encourage you to go check it out. It is an extraordinary place. They are doing so many wonderful things. And for me as a school board member, it was I felt very jealous that we didn't have something like this up in my home school district up in Santa Monica. What the communities of the South Bay did is they realized that there was so much more you could do together if you pooled resources and you were able to build using the ROP funds and the CTE funds from all the different school districts. You could build a cutting-edge auto shop program and coding and gaming and nurse practitioner work and EMT work. And dental hygiene and haircutting and cosmetology and textiles. I mean, I felt like I was walking through a Richard Scarry book of the entire economy, just walking around the center. You got a little window into everything. It was just amazing. So I really do encourage you to go check it out. It is a jewel. It's a jewel of the South Bay, and we really do have to do whatever we can to keep it alive and keep it going. And we're going to need some creative minds and some financial help, to be real honest. from some of the folks in the room to keep that center going. Now, obviously, SoCal Rock, along with our amazing schools, colleges, and universities, helps feeds the workforce of the South Bay, which is the brain trust of the aerospace industry, as was mentioned. It's a huge part of our economy, not just in Torrance, but for California. Statewide aerospace actually employs over 200,000 Californians directly, supports more than 500,000 jobs in related fields. And so I think we realize that aerospace is larger than the entertainment, and there's two enormous, I think entertainment and hospitality combined, it's sort of extraordinary. For California, these two enormous industries, aerospace is bigger. So as was mentioned, I've been named the vice chair of our Senate Select Committee on Defense and Aerospace. It's chaired by Senator Gene Fuller, who will succeed Bob Huff as the Senate's new Republican leader. And so we're working very closely together. It's a great partnership, and we're authorized to hold hearings and formulate legislative proposals and outreach efforts that advance the defense and aerospace industry's needs in California and impress upon federal, state, and local decision makers the economic and strategic importance of these two economic sectors to California's economy. Now, I don't think Californians recognize just how significant a sector of our economy is due to aerospace. So, nearly everyone has heard how California feeds the world and is an entertainment powerhouse. But, okay, so here's the quote. So the revenues of our state, $61.6 billion, it's roughly equivalent to the revenues of California's ag and entertainment industries combined, which is really, really amazing. And it's a huge story that I think needs to be told. So I was pleased to participate in California's Aerospace Week in the Capitol this year. My staff and I will be working to make that annual event even bigger and more successful in years to come. And I'm also going to be joining with my colleagues to tour LA Air Force Base really soon. And let me just take this opportunity to be absolutely clear. I really do plan to be in the trenches, on the ground, in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. I already have a trip planned there, delivering the unequivocal and emphatic message that the closure of the LA Air Force Base is absolutely needs to be off the table, that there's no place in this country there's simply no place in this nation more suitable to develop, deploy, and sustain the military space systems of the United States than at the base's Space and Missile Systems Center. We are the brain trust here in the South Bay. We have the world's leading aerospace companies, the cutting-edge educational institutions, the knowledge, the workforce, the history, and the capacity to continue to lead. And together we'll absolutely do that. In fact, as America is reassessing and considering the realignment of its military assets, I just hope that everyone will join me in making the pitch that the South Bay is the place to expand, to invest, and to double down on aerospace, that $1 spent in aerospace and defense here multiplies like few places on earth. And I think that sometimes some of our folks in Washington, the bean counters there, are not always aware of the extraordinary collective impact that the innovation that exists here. There's a special brew, there's a special mix here in our region that is not going to be found in some of the places that they're considering moving these operations to. So this is an enormous priority for me, and I really do want to work with folks in here to make sure that we do everything we can to fight for that base. So those are some of the things that I'm working on. It's been a fascinating job so far, very hectic job, I'll tell you, just going back and forth, LA, Sacramento. I feel, I'm sort of living in two places at once. But I really do appreciate the trust and the faith that the voters of this district placed in me. I'm very anxious to build strong relationships. I'm already very grateful for the strong relationships that I've been able to build with leadership in Torrance. I'm anxious to be an engaged, active, and proactive member of the legislature. Let me just point out two of my staff who are in the back, Sam Liu and Jamie Reyna. We have a robust team up in Sacramento that are helping to cobble together a strong bill package and prepare me with my votes and prepare me in my committees. But here in the district office, we have an office right here in the South Bay. We're working every single day with chambers of commerce, with constituents, helping people navigate the difficult bureaucracy of the state government, helping people better understand the way that our government works and also how we can help them. And I'm just anxious I'm here for the long haul. I want to be engaged. I want to be a proactive and an effective legislator for this area. So thank you so much for your confidence. Thank you so much for having me here today. And let's continue with the program. Thank you.
I enjoyed his speech so much I forgot to give him our gift. So on behalf of the Torrance Area Chamber of Commerce, Senator Allen, please accept our small token of appreciation.
Thank you so much.
And last but not least, I'm here to introduce Assemblymember David Hadley. Assemblyman David Hadley was elected to represent the 66th Assembly District in November 2014. Born and raised in Fullerton, he attended high school in Anaheim. David completed his bachelor's degree at Dartmouth College and his master's degree at the London School of Economics. David and his wife Suzanne have been married for over 22 years, and they are proud parents of 4 children. Their 19-year-old son Jack is a cadet at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. Their 3 daughters are Claire, 17, Ellen, 15, and Faith, 13. Claire and Ellen are students at Miracosta High School, and Faith attends Manhattan Beach Middle School. 18 years ago, David founded Hadley Partners Incorporated, HPI. HPI is a financial advisory firm that specializes in representing entrepreneurial and family-owned businesses in the financing and sale of their companies. Since its founding, HPI has advised well over 100 businesses and created thousands of new jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Assemblymember David Hadley.
Well, thank you, everybody. And as Senator Allen said, I have to say it twice. 2 very tough acts to follow, Senator Hall and Senator Allen. So thank you very much. I figured I'd go shorter with the introduction so I could speak longer. I hope you guys have some time. I hope you have some time this morning. It's going to be great. So Rob, thank you for the introduction, and Heidi and Donna, thanks for putting this together, and to all the team who helped organize this event. And I also want to thank my wife Suzanne in the back of the room, who is here. You know, and I'm so pleased to be speaking before this chamber as your South Bay Assemblyman. And, you know, since this is my first year in the legislature, I just want to introduce myself briefly. Rob gave a little bit of a sense off the top, but I'm a small businessman. I've spent the last 17, 18 years working to help businesses grow their companies or help business owners sell their companies if they were no longer the right people to run it, if they were ready to exit or retire, or they were in a consolidating industry. And I think that I have a lot of perspective and experience that will help improve the legislative climate for our businesses and our employees and our families in California. But it's a real team effort. And groups like this and engagement like this is so important. And there's something interesting about your South Bay representation in Sacramento that's worth pointing out, which is that we're mostly freshmen. The 4 assembly members who represent the South Bay, Assemblywoman Autumn Burke is in El Segundo and north of there. I'm in Manhattan Beach through Torrance and through Palos Verdes and Lomita and Gardena and Harbor City. Mike Gibson is just east of me in Carson and Inglewood and so on. And then Patrick O'Donnell is in Long Beach. And we were all elected for the first time in November. And then Senator Allen is a freshman member to the Senate as well. So Senator Hall is of the 6 of us, he's the only one with experience in Sacramento prior to November. And that makes it all the more important that we are engaged with the people in this room and with the community in the South Bay and beyond, because so many of you who've been on the front lines on so many of the issues that are important to the future of the South Bay. And a lot of ground has been covered by my predecessors, so I'm not going to cover all the critical local issues that I'm working on, but I do want to highlight a couple of them. The first is SoCal ROC, Southern California Regional Occupational Center. I'm absolutely committed to working with Senators Allen and Hall and Assemblywoman Burke. I'm a member of Senator Burke's Select Committee on continuing technical education, and it is imperative both for the kids of the South Bay and the adults, because it truly is lifelong learning, but it's imperative not only for the students of the South Bay, but also for the employers of the South Bay, that we can continue to match the skills that employers need and the job options that are most attractive and are the best opportunities for so many of our kids. You know, not everybody can make a living in the South Bay by getting a sociology degree at Brown. Some of those people do very well, but we need a lot more skills in the economy and in our workplaces and in our communities than that. So SoCal Rock is an important focus of mine as well. As it relates to the Air Force Base, I won't rehash what Senator Allen has already said. This is a critical institution, not just for our national security, but for the South Bay. And I'm very focused on working to make sure that not just that it stays open, because it's not a black or white issue. There are also functions within the Air Force Base that could be outsourced to other states or moved. So it's not a black or white. We not only need to keep the base open, but we need to keep critical personnel, critical capabilities, critical missions of the Air Force Base here in the South Bay. And one piece of legislation that I've introduced that touches on that, AB 306, is a bill to give public school district choice to military personnel, to military families based on bases in California. So today, if you are deployed to LA Air Force Base, you're on base housing, if you will. It's not quite on base, but your on base housing is in San Pedro, and it is in LA Unified School District. And I don't want our military families to be making the choice between schools that may not be the right schools for their kids or trying to afford South Bay housing on military salaries, on military compensation structure, so that they can get their kids into the school districts that are right for them. So AB 306 would remove the veto from the originating school district and allow military personnel the right to choose the school districts that their kids attend when they're deployed on bases throughout California. So we're looking forward to moving that along. I moved to Manhattan Beach. I moved to the South Bay. Suzanne and I moved to the South Bay almost 20 years ago, really for the public schools. We were living in New York City, having a great time. As Rob said, I grew up in Southern California, but I spent 15 years on the East Coast. Suzanne and I got married. Suzanne, by the way, is a Wisconsin girl. So for those of you whose brackets are not completely busted 2 weeks into March Madness, you know, go Badgers this weekend. Yeah, exactly. We got one applaud over here. But we moved to this community almost 20 years ago for the public schools. All 4 of our kids have gone public school route. And that is true not just for us, but for so many of the people in this community. And the economic foundation of the South Bay is our talent pool, and our talent pool is drawn here by our public schools. This is one of the very few places in the state where people spend $500,000 or $2 million for vacant lots so that they can build homes and live in districts where public schools are some of the best in the state. And one of the ways that we can extend the prosperity of the South Bay is by extending that model of high-quality, locally controlled school districts. So I've also introduced legislation AB 803, I get the numbers mixed up sometimes, which will streamline the process of creating new school districts in California. So for example, in the South Bay district that I represent, Palos Verdes, Torrance, Manhattan, Hermosa, and Redondo each have their own school district. In the eastern third of my district, the cities of Gardena and Lomita and the incorporated and unincorporated parts of Los Angeles, Harbor City and El Camino Village and so on, are all part of LA Unified. Well, I believe that Gardena and Lomita, they elect their own city council members. The city of Gardena elects its own mayor. I believe that those cities should also be electing their own school board trustees, and that they should be controlling the educational destinies of their kids' futures, just like the parents, the residents of Torrance do. And AB 803 is designed, thank you. AB 803 is designed to make that process achievable. It starts with either a city council resolution or a petition signed by over 10% of the residents of the city. It goes through a planning process, and ultimately it culminates in an up or down vote of the residents of that district. So it's a serious undertaking. There are a lot of issues to deal with, everything from assets and liabilities to transition issues and collective bargaining agreements and so on. But Torrance left LA Unified in 1947, almost 70 years ago. And I think everybody in Torrance today is proud of the leadership of the city 70 years ago to make that happen. No jurisdiction has left LA Unified since then. It's been almost 70 years. And I think it's time for us to give other kids in LA the same opportunities that kids in the South Bay have, and to give parents the ability to control the educational destinies of their futures in Gardena, in Lomita, and in other communities around California. So we're working hard on that. So since my predecessors covered so much ground on the many local issues, and I'm working with their offices on virtually all of these in one way or another, I'd like to take a slightly bigger picture and talk statewide for a second, in the time that I've got available. California has a really funny business reputation. You can find reputable magazines and reputable studies that will tell you that California has the worst business climate in the United States. CEO magazine has ranked California's business climate as dead last for 8 or 9 years in a row. And a lot of Republican politicians love to quote those studies. You can also find magazines and studies that tell you that we live in one of the best states in the country to do business. According to Business Insider, California is the 4th best state in the country to do business. And of course, these are the magazines and the studies that the Democrats tend to quote in Sacramento. So what's going on here? Let me give you my take on it. California is such an amazing place. Just think about everything we have. We have the weather, we have the natural beauty, we have the coast, we have Silicon Valley, we have the aerospace industry, we have the higher education system, we have the ports, we have Hollywood, Disneyland, agricultural wealth, energy wealth beyond imagination. California is such an amazing place that people who can make a good living anywhere in the world want to live here. Those are software engineers, those are medical researchers, those are hedge fund managers, those are A-list Hollywood people. They're willing to put up with high taxes, expensive housing, kind of a grind, painful commutes in many, many cases. People are willing to put up with a lot to live in California. And because of our investments in higher education, we've also created a great symbiotic relationship between intellectual property intensive businesses and the talent pool that feeds on that. You add to all that a very generous R&D tax credit, which is a big part of the California corporate tax code, and this is a great state to do intellectual property work. So companies like Apple, like Amgen, like Pfizer, like Facebook, find California to be a pretty good corporate home. And that's why we can be home to so many of the leaders of tomorrow's industries, despite having a business climate that really is pretty darn harsh in a lot of ways. It's also why we can balance the state budget 7 or 8 years out of 10 on the backs of a very narrow sliver of our economy. When the stock market is good, Facebook billionaires and IPOs pay for a lot of state services. But when the stock market is in trouble, the economy's in trouble, state revenues drop more dramatically in California than in virtually any state in the country, except for a few that derive most of their revenue from the price of oil, states like Alaska or North Dakota. Except for states like that, California has the most volatile revenue stream in the country. I'll tell you an amazing story that I had the chance to learn a couple weeks ago. I was visiting Apple in Silicon Valley, and a couple other legislators and I met with the treasurer of the company. And he literally sat down with us. He walked out of the conference call with investors where he announced that Apple had made more money in the fourth quarter than any company in the history of the world. They had made $18 billion after tax in the fourth quarter. That's 90 days. And they had made $40 billion approximately in 2014 as a whole. And one of the questions I got to ask him was how much Apple had paid in state corporate income tax in 2014. And the answer was about $30 million, which is a tax burden of well under 0.1%. Now, I just want to be 100% clear. I'm not here to bash Apple. Apple is an amazing company. We're very fortunate to have them in California, and we should always be mindful as policymakers that there are plenty of states with 0 state corporate income taxes. But I pointed out, because I suspect very few of the manufacturing companies in the state and very few of your businesses, I can certainly speak for my business, had a 0.1% corporate tax burden. So we have, not only do we have a lot of conditions that make California a good place for IP development, we have really tilted our tax code in favor of that as well. And a lot of people who frankly are not well off as employees or investors in Apple are paying for the state's services, the state's public services. So if you're in the IP economy, if you're in the intellectual property economy, California's not a bad place. But if you're in the business of making anything, moving anything, growing anything, or extracting anything, California is a brutal place to do business. And whether it's how the California Environmental Quality Act works, or wage and hour legislation, the litigation climate, workers' compensation, the cost of electricity, the quality of the public schools that many of your employees are able to send their kids to, California is not a good home for a lot of corporate citizens. And that is why a state with all of California's amazing advantages that I mentioned earlier, where we can have both Facebook and Amgen and companies like that, but we also have Farmers Brothers and Charles Schwab and Toyota and companies leaving, as Senator Hall said, too many jobs, too many families being forced to either sacrifice their standard of living or leave California. So our challenge in Sacramento is a little different, in my opinion, than most people characterize it. We don't honestly need to learn how, excuse me, we don't need to learn how to encourage job and wealth creation in the industries of tomorrow. We're very good at it. That doesn't mean we can't do things better, but we have advantages that very few states have. What we need to learn to do is make sure that California's policy is sufficiently balanced that all of California can benefit from our amazing advantages. We should not have the highest poverty rate in the country, the 4th highest unemployment rate in the country, the 46th ranked schools in the country. We should not have all those things in a state with all of California's amazing advantages. And finally, the South Bay is really one of those special parts of the state where we're at the crossroads of this issue. Because on the one hand, we have many of the advantages that bring those cool industries of tomorrow to our district, to our region. We have amazing weather, we have great schools, we have proximity to LA, we have great advantages. We have the aerospace industry, we have the ports, and so on. We have all those things. But on the other hand, we're also, as you all know, we're home to refineries. We're home to ports, which are just places to move millions and millions of tons of stuff. The aerospace industry, we think of it as a big innovation center, and it absolutely is. But first and foremost, aerospace is a manufacturing business. It's about making stuff. And too much of our aerospace manufacturing in this country has left California. The R&D is still here, and some of the manufacturing is still here. But we need to make it possible to make the things that we design in California as well. So the South Bay can really play an important role in making sure that we can advance the industries of tomorrow, as California has historically been very good at doing, but we can also make sure that the prosperity that those opportunities can create is widely shared. You know, we are very fortunate in the South Bay. We have some of the highest incomes, we have some of the lowest unemployment rates, and like I said, the people who are getting educated here have some of the best opportunities for tomorrow. But, you know, I'm a middle-class kid from Fullerton, and I want to make sure that the things that we enjoy in the South Bay are really enjoyed statewide, and that the entire next generation of Californians can make their futures here the way that we have in this room, and the way that I hope that my kids and your kids are able to do that in the generation ahead. So that's going to be my North Star in my policy making in Sacramento. Not just, is it good for the South Bay? That's critically important, but we need to make sure that the advantages we have here are shared statewide. And so I look forward to working with all of my fellow legislators and with all of you in the room to make sure that we keep the California dream alive for all Californians. Thanks very much. And Senator Allen, I'm going to stay right here, and I'm going to wait for Rob to come on. Oh, you're here. Terrific. Thanks very much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Assemblymember Hadley, Senator Hall, Senator Allen. This event would not have been possible without the support of our distinguished sponsors today, Kaiser Permanente, Verango Solar, and ExxonMobil. I also want to recognize Linda Amato and the Doubletree staff for their professionalism and hospitality. I want to recognize Torrance City Cable for airing the event, Donna Duperon and their staff for the management of a well-run event. A special thank you to Brandon Matson, the Government Affairs Coordinator at the Chamber. And last but not least, thank you all for supporting the Torrance Area Chamber of Commerce. Have a great day. God bless you all, and drive safe.